Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the first episode of Prison Pillow Talk. The reason I decided to call it Prison Pillow Talk is because I worked at Oshkosh Correctional Institution, which is the largest prison in Wisconsin. It's also one of the softest prisons in Wisconsin, which is why it's called the Pillow. I began corrections 2018, February, so about 5 years ago. And for the last 4 years, I've been dealing with, well, never mind, fuck that. Since I started, I've been dealing with discrimination and harassment. Despite attempts at reporting it, nothing was ever done. It didn't matter how high up the chain you went. We have something called the chain of command. It's just you report it to the next highest rank, right? So I was an officer, so I reported to a sergeant. If that didn't cut it, then you go to the lieutenant, captain, etc., etc. But the unfortunate part is it didn't really matter who you talked to. If they weren't the top dog, they would just say things like, I don't want to hear it, or I don't want to be involved. Most of the time or the other thing was, oh, that's above my head. So then, you try the next person, they say, that's above my head too. So, I mean, with that, obviously it creates a toxic work environment if nobody wants to handle anything that needs to be handled. And that is why we have a shortage in corrections right now. But anyways, I'm going to start at the beginning with my time in the academy. Um, I had some interesting, very, very interesting experiences. Um, a lot of them involving my roommate. He was a character, and not for the better, unfortunately. Like, I don't mean to speak bad on anybody, but I mean, shit, it is what it is, right? At this point. Um, yeah, so in 2018, when I first started, I never had any aspirations to work in corrections or law enforcement or anything like that. I've had negative experiences with law enforcement myself. Not going to get into those details right now, but kind of left a bad taste in my mouth. But there's also reality. I was broke. I had bills to pay, shit like that. And I was referred to corrections by a former coach of mine, actually, a football coach. Very nice guy. Shout outs to you if you watch this. But, anyways, the way that it was set up to work is that you apply, you interview at whatever prison is nearest to you. So for me, it was at Oshkosh Correctional Institution. And after you apply, if you get accepted, which they're short, they took anybody. And again, that's not a dig, but ask anybody in corrections right now, and they'll tell you the same shit. Um, but yeah, so pre-COVID, after you get accepted, you'd go to Madison, state capital. That's where their main office is, and you do training out in Madison. And the training, if you live beyond like 50 miles away or something like that, is either 50 or 70. They'll put you up in a hotel for 5 days out of the week. So Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you got to go home, go wherever you belong, and then come back. So my first day when I arrived at the main training office, I didn't really know what to expect. Like I said, I didn't really plan on doing this, but everybody has preconceived like notions of what they're walking into, right? So I remember that first day, um, I thought it'd be like high testosterone. I mean, I'm human too. I make assumptions. I'm wrong. So I thought it'd be a lot of like former military members or like athletes, shit like that. And I remember I walked into a room and I like looked around. I was like, oh, this ain't it. Like, this can't be it. Um, so I like stepped out and I looked into another room, and that was actually the where they were doing the probation and parole training. And then I realized like this is it. So I turned my ass back around and found a seat. Um, everybody does it. I look for the people that I thought I would like gel with based on first impressions, and that's kind of like where I sat. Um, our class had, I think it was like 38 or 39 people, which is considered a small class, or at least at the time it was considered a small class. I mean, now they can't get anybody in the academy, so I mean, what was small then is big now, I guess. But yeah, so the first day, it started at 9. Yeah, 9 to 5. Yeah, it's 9 to 5. And, you know, we did first day shit. So, fill out paperwork and introductions and stuff like that. So, the guy that ended up being my roommate, I'm calling Fireman. Like, he a little weird. I don't even come in after me or anything like that. Shout out to Fireman. If you watch this, I doubt he'll ever see this. But anyways, he on day one during the introductions, he was doing some shit that kind of gave me like some, like maybe like double take, like, bro, that's cap. You know what I mean? One of the things that they asked was, why are we doing corrections, right? So like, I like to keep it 100, right? So when it got to me, I said, look, I'm not trying to do corrections. I'm just trying to work some overtime, knock out knock out these bills, this little bit of debt I got, and then I'm gone for bigger, better things, is what I had thought at the time. Because we all have aspirations and ideas of how things are going to work, and it doesn't always work that way. But anyways, we had a lot of generic answers, like, oh, my pops was a correctional officer, shit like that. But when it got to the guy that ended up being my roommate, the person before him had said that they were inspired by 9/11. They wanted to be a correctional officer because they were impacted by 9/11, and that made them want to do like law enforcement or something like that, So then I got to Fireman, which was right after that. And he would bob his head like this when he talks. And he was like, yeah, I was inspired by 9/11 too. My uncle, he died in 9/11, but before he died, the last thing he did was he called a radio station and told them, call my cousin, or my nephew, Fireman, out in Wisconsin, and tell him that I love him. So like when I heard that, I was like, bro, what you talking about, man? Like, obviously I didn't say that out loud, but in my head, because I was thinking like, yo, if I'm about to die, right? Like if I'm in one of those towers and it's 9/11, I'm about to die. First off, I'm not calling cousin John. Oh shit. I mean cousin Fireman out in Wisconsin, right? Like, that doesn't make sense. I'm not calling no radio station to call cousin Fireman out in Wisconsin. Like, I'm calling my mom, my pops, brother, etc., etc. Like, that shit just didn't make sense to me. I was like, so I knew that story was cap right away because, again, nobody's calling a goddamn radio station. Like, why not just call it if you that close with Fireman, or Fireman's that close with this guy? Why not call him directly? Like, that shit just never made sense. Or leave a voicemail, something like that. Yeah, it never made sense to me. But that was like my first. Okay, this guy's kind of strange, right? And when we were going through the policies and all that stuff on day one, it was like elementary school type shit, right? So like, all right, now you read this paragraph, and yo, you read this paragraph. You know what I mean? So we were going around the room. Everybody was reading their paragraphs, right? And like, Hey, I don't know if I'm an asshole or not, but I remember elementary school, there's some kids that just, and like, I'm not hating on anybody that struggles with reading or has learning disabilities or anything of that nature. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a strong point for everybody. And I get that. Like, I have my own weaknesses too, right? Um, anyways, so there's a couple cats that just couldn't read, and Fireman was one of them. So like, he would go and he'd start reading this paragraph, and I mean, fam, the shit was like 4 sentences long, and when he would get to a word that he didn't know, instead of like when, oh yeah, the elementary school thing, right? So like, there's always that one motherfucker that couldn't read, and everybody in the class knew it, right? So once it was their turn to read, everybody got the snickering. That was this, right? Like, I'm sorry. You can think I'm a bad person if you want, but I don't know, man. The shit was funny to me, right? So it got to dude, and when he got the words that he didn't know, and these are like basic words. I'm gonna say hot sauce because I got some hot sauce in front of me right now. Like, if he didn't know how to say, like, read sauce, he would just make up a word for it. Like, so nothing he read ever made sense because he was just making up words and inserting them into the paragraphs and shit like that. Um, yeah, so that was day one, right? And like I said, I sat by some people I thought I would gel with, and we kind of like clicked up for the day. Got to make those connections, right? And the way that it was set up is, so I lived longer than 50 miles or further than 50 miles away from the training. So I stayed in a hotel because I'm not about to drive an hour and a half every morning for training. You know what I mean? Like, if they're going to pay for it, they're going to give you meals, all that shit. Why not? Um, but the unfortunate part was we didn't get to pick our roommates, right? So traditionally, I've had bad luck. Like, you ask any of my friends, like, I just have some of the craziest shit happen to me, and like, I'm just chilling, mind my own business, and some bad luck will like fall into my lap. But anyways, the way that they had it set up was we did that first day of training, the introduction, and then we would go to the hotel, and you'd find out who your roommate is based upon your room key, right? And then they had a further stipulation that you couldn't change your roommate. So you couldn't pick them and you couldn't change them. It was what it was. Men with men, women with women. So there's no like issues with that. But yeah, so we got to the lobby all at the same time. We finished class at the same time. Everybody just followed everybody to the hotel. And I remember being in the lobby, and like, I got my key. I was kind of just standing around talking to some guys, waiting to find out who I was going to be, I'm gonna say celled up with because that shit felt like prison to me. Find out who I celled up with. And once Fireman picked up his key and he was like, "Oh, I got room, blah, blah, blah." The guys that I had like clicked with on that first day, they just looked at me and they're like, "Bro, you got him?" I was like, "Yeah, I wouldn't expect anything else, right?" So, um, in one note, um, when I was younger, I remember I wasn't always the nicest dude. Like, I would try to get along with people, um, but sometimes I'd pick on people. Like, I was young. It is what it is. I've reflected on it. I've learned from it, and I don't do that shit anymore. But because of that, I have always had a soft spot towards people that are like socially awkward. So this dude, Fireman, I just thought like, yo, he's socially awkward, but who knows? Maybe he's a nice guy, right? Like, gotta give him a chance, right? So we went up to the room, I dropped my shit off and I went to the gym. So I got a nice little workout in because I used to go to the gym back in those days. And when I came back, Fireman was posted up on the bed and he's like, yo. Well, he didn't say yo, but you know what I mean. But yeah, so he was like, yo, you trying to get some food? Because not only did they put you up in a hotel, they give you a meal card, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I think each meal had like $20 worth of, like, you can get $20 worth of shit, but it's from 3 select locations. Um, and I said, I was like, sure, why not? So he said he wanted to go to Lazy Oaf. I think that's what it was called. It's like something like that. It's lazy something. Um, like that. So we went down the lobby, and the lobby had this shuttle service. So we decided that we were just gonna take the shuttle service, right? Like save some gas, I guess, right? But while we were waiting, there's this man and this woman. They're waiting in the lobby too, waiting for the shuttle service too. The shuttle service. And we got to chopping it up with them just a little bit. They're friendly. And once we got into the shuttle, that's when we realized, like, oh, we're all going to the same place, right? So when we're talking in the shuttle, I don't know, we just had casual conversation, like it wasn't anything weird like that. The dude, he was like late 40s, and the female was maybe late 30s, early 40s. But yeah, so we got to the Lazy Oaf, and when we got there, the man was like, hey, since we drove here together, you guys just want to eat together? And like, I didn't have any issues with it because like we didn't know anybody. And like, although I'm trying to give Fireman a chance, I figured having like more bodies present would help the conversation flow just a little bit. You know what I mean? So I said, sure, why not? So we sat down, we ordered our food, we're having some conversation. The guy, the gentleman, he owned it was like a mail courier service or something of that nature, something very similar to that, if not that. And the female was like his number 2, right? So if he's the big boss, she's like the not as big boss, but still the big boss, you know what I'm saying? So they talked about that a little bit. And I remember the guy telling Fireman and I, like, hey, if you travel, you got to go in the Middle East. The women out there are beautiful. And the woman, the lady, the female, she told me that if I have kids, I need to have a daughter because she'd have really cute curly hair. My hair was better back in the day. The stress done fucked it all up, but I'm fixing that these days. Working on some self improvement, self happiness, etc., etc. But shortly after that, they both had to step away for phone calls. And when they stepped away, Fireman, he kind of like took like a little double take, make sure nobody around. And he like leaned over, put his arms up on the table, kind of slid towards me. And he's like, hey, I think they're DOC undercover. I was like, bro, what are you talking about? Like I said, I was up on the acronyms, right? So my stupid ass, I'm training for the Department of Corrections, but I don't know, man. The acronym just didn't stick with me on day one, right? So I'm like, what you talking about? He was like, yeah, I think they're DOC undercover. I think they're here to see if we're doing anything that'll get us in trouble. I was like, bro, what are you on, bro? Like, no, I think they're just friendly people, just normal friendly people. And he's like, nah, they're DOC undercover. So the reason he said that, when we were doing that day one stuff, like I said, they take in anybody, right? So people people be doing some shicey shit in these hotels, right? So like, there's been fights, or people are drinking in the hot tub and like leaving the bottles in the hot tub, or some dudes like, I don't know, brought like prostitutes or strippers, but I don't know, just dumb shit, right? So the instructors told us that occasionally they'd have captains or supervisors or whatever just kind of like go through the hotel and make sure nobody's doing anything stupid, right? So I think Fireman thought that this was that, but I don't think they're like that deep undercover. Like, I think it's a casual stroll through the hallways, you know what I'm saying? But he was convinced they're DOC undercover, and he wanted to leave. So like, I didn't have any deep attachments to these two individuals or anything like that. Like, I didn't have any reason to fight the state, right? So when they came back, we're just like, hey, we gotta be up early, so we're gonna leave. And before we left, the the lady, she gave me her business card, man. Like, she's like, hey, if you ever need a job or something like that, just reach out. You seem like a nice guy. All right, so all right, it's what any good business person does, right? Um, yeah. So we went back. He went into his bed. I went into my bed. We flipped on a movie and went to sleep, right? Like, nothing weird happened, right? So when I woke up, he was already gone. Now, I've always struggled to wake up for my alarms. Um, Anybody that like truly, truly knows me, any past roommates or anything like that, my mom, oh my God, I feel bad for my mom. Um, they just know like I sleep through that shit. But anyways, um, yeah, he was gone. He was gone. Got ready and everything. Could have could have mugged me. I never would have known. I just sleep that hard. But anyways, going on a tangent. I thought that was kind of weird because like I woke up, like I said, it's like, scratch that. Earlier I said it was 9 to 5. No, it was actually 8 to 4. Um, but I was awake at like 7, so it wasn't like crazy late, And the academy was only 10 minutes away, so what need is there to be up any earlier, right? Um, yeah, so I got ready and I went over. Um, One thing about me, like what I realized, people would show up 30 minutes early, 40 minutes early because they wanted to make a good impression. I was like, yo, I'm not gonna show up to my job 40 minutes early. Like, they're not paying you for it. Why are you gonna show up 40 minutes early? So I'm not gonna pretend to, right? So I was more like the 10-minute, 15-minute early kind of guy. So I'm not late, but I don't look as good as, Mr. 40 or Miss 50. But Fireman, he was on some other shit, man. He would get there at like, start at 8. He would get there at like 6:30 to the parking lot and just sit and wait for it to open so he could say that he was the first person there every day. Um, yeah. So I got there. It was maybe like 7:40, 7:45, and I walked in, and the way the layout is like, you walk in and they have like kind of an open concept with a check-in desk, but if you walk straight ahead, that's where our training room was. So you have to like walk past this desk to get to the training room. And the director of the program, and like, again, I wasn't up on the acronyms and who's who yet. So, but I knew she was up there, right? Because all the captains and lieutenants had to like kind of bow down to her a little bit. Like, if she was talking, nobody else was talking. So I knew she was important. But when I walked past her, she's like, "Oh, good morning, Van Rossum." And I kind of like paused for a second because I was like, "Oh, that's kind of strange that she remembers my name already by like, the morning of day 2." And I was like, "Oh, good morning." She's like, "So I I heard you had a good night last night. I thought back to it, and I was like, nothing crazy happened, you know what I mean? So I was like, oh yeah, it's all right. She's like, yeah, I heard you met some interesting people. And the only people that stood out to me were the people that we ate with. So I was like, ah, not really. And she said, oh, you don't have to lie to me about it. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, your roommate already told me all about it. I was like, told you about what? She said, apparently you were soliciting prostitution. I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, bro, I went to the gym, I ate dinner, I went to sleep. Like I didn't say that, but in my head, I'm like, what is she talking about? And I was like, no. So what I said was like, no, like, what? And she's like, yeah, your roommate told me all about it. Like, did you accept anything from, you know, any interesting people? And the only thing I thought, like I said, I took that business card, right? But I didn't even point that out. I was just like, no. And I just shook my, and I just kept, it was so ridiculous to me in the moment. I didn't even really respond to it, to be quite honest. Um, yeah. So that was day one. And Fireman, man, day one, Fireman reported me for soliciting prostitution. And went downhill from there. My entire corrections career, like the next 5 years. Especially, well, I don't want to say especially in the academy. Like, Fireman, he made no improvements. I didn't even hold that shit against him. Like, going forward, I can move past shit, right? Like, if we have a misunderstanding or something like that, I don't always, like, I'm not the type to hold it against somebody forever, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to get on with my day. I only got to post up a dude for like a month and a half, 2 months, whatever it was. So because we can't switch roommates, I was like, it doesn't help any situation to hold it against them. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that was day one. Um, I'll come back with more academy stories. I'm gonna try to do this chronologically, in a chronological order. I think it'll be quite apparent as you listen, like all the problems with corrections and why there's such a staffing shortage and why they can't retain anybody and why the training's so poor. I don't know, man. Like, in retrospect, it even going through it, if this was a business, it's a government thing, obviously, state enterprise. But if this was like a personal business, that shit would be out of business a long time ago. The lack of management, terrible asset management, terrible. I mean, I'm gonna call it customer service, but you know what I mean. Like, if you take anybody, and again, I'm not saying this to be disrespectful towards the people that work in correct. There are good people in corrections. Don't get me wrong. Like, not everybody's bad. I mean, it's never that way. But the bad ones drive out the good ones. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, if this was like a business, that shit would be. I don't even think it wouldn't even make it past year one. Like, that would be a COVID casualty. Um, yeah. So I'm gonna stop the video here. Um, Obviously, this is probably poor quality. I'm gonna see if I can improve like video quality or whatever. I'm just posted up on my couch right now. I don't have any fancy backgrounds or anything like that. I gotta work on my editing skills. I took this in one take. Yeah, but I'm gonna try improving that shit, and I'm gonna keep coming out with stories. So stay tuned. Thanks for stopping by.